So welcome at my garden. For a longer time I had the idea of creating some kind of a dystopian vision facing the global warming threat to the humanity. And I envisioned a certain character, a person that is running away from the civilization, and so he decides to find a hidden house in the middle of nowhere and start to create enough resources for survival, building some kind of smaller glass house where he can plant fruits and vegetables, and he can live a sustainable life in a dystopian future. Of course, it's a story that in some way I do not appreciate so much, because I think that whatever will happen and whatever is happening right now, we are much stronger when we help each other than when we separate and isolate each other. And somehow it struck in a very special way today in this coronavirus crisis, where we actually are forced into isolation. And it's a work that tries to be, it's like, it's a life and it's a work. The garden really exists. The glass house exists. This house exists. And there is a whole story built around it, which I'm writing, and I will read you parts of that. This is how it started. The insects disappeared first. If you walked in the meadow in the summer, something was missing. What it was wouldn't have occurred to anyone at first. It was just somehow quieter. There weren't as many flowers either. Winters were shorter and stranger, summers were dry and hot. Everything changed gradually, piece by piece, and people somehow got used to it. Forest fires increased every year, and the season stretched into September and even October. Today nothing is left from the forest, only pieces of charred blackness scattered on the surface. Meanwhile, the sea levels rose higher and coastal countries built increasingly sophisticated and costly barriers to protect their cities. Water had to be rationed. Conserving water was a must. Some days there was no water at all. However, only a few realized that in this part of the world, people were still doing well. Films were still shown in movie theaters, music still played in the clubs. At night you dive into the fever, and in the morning you wake up with somebody to help you forget the loneliness and where you are heading, which only few acknowledge, but many suspect. People shut themselves in the air-conditioned rooms and offices and traveled in air-conditioned cars to cooler countries. The future was bleak, but everyone followed the unwritten rule and didn't talk about it. He almost stopped going back to the city and he learned how to be alone. That was the hardest thing. One day he wrote in his diary, "When loneliness visits me, it sits down next to me and hugs me with a heavy arm. I welcome it with respect and understanding. I welcome you, loneliness, my old acquaintance, and I respectfully receive you." Then I stop feeling that arm and only a fine breeze is left behind. That stays. But when I sit in front of the house and the sun shines through the clouds at a strange angle, when that light pours down on the countryside and lights up a lonely tree or a rock, and I unwittingly smile over such beauty, My heart opens up, but there is no one to show it to. Then I realize that my decision to survive without regard to anyone or anything is like living in a personal prison. He peeks in the greenhouse and combs the leaves with his hand, pulling out something here and there, but he doesn't linger. Every single touch of a plant is like a ritual, as if he is greeting them one after another. It's stuffy in the greenhouse, difficult to breathe. He pulls his hood tighter and walks out. He tightens the long string around his waist and takes off. He drags the string behind him. The wind is really strong today, and he progresses slowly. He breathes heavily, it's tiring. My mask needs a new filter, he thinks. But I don't have too many of them left. We need to save them, it's still alright. He walks and thinks of Teresa. She's surely still asleep. Who knows what she's dreaming about? What can a girl who knows only him, this house and this desolate land dream about? He keeps walking and looks down at his feet. Here and there pieces of colored plastic shine through from under the concrete dust. He's tried hard to grow an apple tree, but so far only a wild plum has survived. He must trim it, because it's starting to grow over the top of the greenhouse. He can still remember the taste of apples, especially the sweetness of the earth. This feeling mixes with the dust that always seems to find its way under the mask and settle deep in his pores. He should at least take a scarf, he tells himself. From time to time he starts to cough in the evening and can't stop. He goes down to the cellar and pretends to work on something so that Teresa won't hear him, but she suspects something anyway.